So I could see that while we are trying to compare my progress and try and recreate an old painting, it's also unrealistic to put them side by side and actually figure out which is better than the other. I also saw how the flowers that I picked out when I first started and the flowers that I picked out now were also very different, and that's because my style has developed. My preference for the shapes in flowers has also changed. When I first started, I was attracted to the really big blooms, and then I started to lean into daintier florals, and I liked certain shapes more and colors. The biggest difference is probably that I used two different types of brushes to paint these paintings. Before we dive in, let's look at the materials that I will be using here. As we start filling our page with more and more flowers, I'm starting to think about smaller sprigs of flowers that we can add in various spaces. At the same time, I'm also considering how to preserve my white spaces, because a painting is not just made up of filling the space. I feel like white space is also part of the entire painting. So that's something for you to think about. Now, right now, I am painting the lavender flower, and it's such a beautiful, classic wildflower, smells so good. And I've started off with just the outside shape of the flower in a very light lilac purple wash. And then after it has started to dry, you can see that I'm going in and slowly darkening my color values. So starting with my lightest value first, which has the most amount of water on my brush, and then following which I start to add more and more paint and pigment to my brush, slowly adding in some of those bits, whether it's petals or whether it's the in-between shadows that you want to capture. Now this here is a white flower, and the thing with white, we talked about how sometimes it's difficult to capture, and I'm literally just using my dirty water from my cups, and then I'm dabbing it all in random spaces. And what I've done is that I've pulled out some little green stems just to connect some of these little dirty whitish spots. And you can see that once I bring the stems through it, it starts to look more and more lively. I'm assuming that this flower is a Queen Anne's lace, so I actually did take a sneak peek of how it looks like so that I have a rough idea of its shape. Now I'm also letting that green color blend and bleed into that white, so you can see that there's a nice little dispersion as it goes along. Now I apologize for the quality of this video because these were flowers that were painted early in the morning before my kids woke up, which means that the lighting is not great, but I am also trying to capture my process as much as possible. So of course, I really appreciate your kind support and as you're watching me paint. Now I'm also adding in some small sprigs of green, just as an assumption that there are some leaves all around too. And you can see just adding in some of those green components really brought this little flower to life. You can also darken the color value of the greens and slowly add them in, especially in some parts in the stem. I am trying to not make the stems too uniform, so you can see that I've actually added more and more darker parts as I go along, just so that there's a bit more definition. Since we've been building up lots and lots of flowers, I thought it would be really fun for us to just paint a leaf, and I'm using my flat brush, just pulling the brush along the flat side and just pulling it, and I varied the color value, starting with really dark color, and then I washed off my brush and had a lot lighter, more diluted color, and I'm just putting it down on paper. You can see that my leaves are not exactly symmetrical, and that's the magic of leaves. Try to make them irregular shape to make the stem a little curved, and that's going to really help you to make more organic looking shapes. The next episode is going to be the last episode, and I'm really excited because I can see how this painting is slowly starting to take shape. So, as you recreate your own painting, I hope that you grant yourself kindness to see that it might not be the very same painting that you used to paint, and that's because over the span of a year, so much could have happened, so much can change and evolve, and also to grant yourself that permission to be in that change, or even to stay where you are at.